today. So welcome back everybody to 14 Days of Christmas. We do have a lot to talk about today, so I want to jump right into it and let you guys know what's in for today. So far, we did go over prepping your quiz funnel. So we talked a little bit about goals. We talked a little bit about why you should use a quiz, and then we went into doing your research. So that part figures out, why should anyone take your quiz? What your offers are, who your audience is, what their brand voice is, and how that turns into figuring out what your personalities are, which will become your results and also the segments for your email marketing platform that becomes your welcome series. I know that was a mouthful, but hopefully you guys are following with me so far. Let me know how you guys feel about the process. And today, on day 4, we're going to talk about title and tagline. Hi, Lisa. How are you? Linda, I was watching The Undoing on HBO, and it's a great show. It's a thriller. So if you guys don't really like the suspense, I don't recommend it because it did stress me out a little bit. But it was a great show. I loved it. And I finished it all in like 2 days. Anyway, so today I am going to go back into the builder. We're going to take a look at some of the templates. I know I said I was going to have an example quiz for you, but I had trouble kind of figuring out what to focus on because I know we have a wide range of people who do different types of coaching, have different types of services, and even different types of products. You might be e-commerce, you might have digital products, you might have physical products. It really just depends. So what I'm going to try to do is relate it back to some of our templates. That way you guys can also go in and look at those same examples, and it's already in there. You don't have to keep coming back to watch this episode of 14 days. So let me go ahead and pull that up. Let's see here. Where is it? Okay, awesome. Make my screen a little bit bigger. So what I love about our templates is that they're all kind of tailored to convert. And it really, of course, depends on your business, which one is right for you, or if you even should use a template. But the biggest use case for templates is to use them as inspiration or for examples, what your quiz should look like, and all of that. When you are looking at your title and tagline, the big thing that I want to focus on is this is the first thing that people are going to see from you and from your quiz, especially if you're doing mass promotion like a Facebook ad, which would reach people that maybe wouldn't have reached if you were to just organically post it on social media or, through email asking people to share and things like that. So this is a really important part of your quiz. It's that hook. It's the first line of, the new novel that you're reading. It's that part where people are like, that's, that makes sense to me, or that's what I want to look at. There are a ton of different recommendations and best practices for your title and tagline that I will go over. I'm mostly going to talk about personality style quizzes. So we're going to look at ones that are going to be more like, what's your blank? What type of blank? And tell me about something and I'll tell you about this. My number one thing with personality style quizzes is the way you frame your title and tagline will set the tone for the rest of the quiz. And that's true for all types. So if you are asking a more broad question like what's your or what type of blank are you, that is going to set the tone, and it's going to give them the opportunity to kind of figure that out and really identify what that is. We do have some templates where it has like a yes or no kind of question where it's like, do you have what it takes? Are you blank? I think there was another one in here. I think most of them are, do you have what it takes? But I usually recommend staying away from yes or no questions just because it's too easy for people to figure out, in my own opinion. But everybody, if you have something to weigh in on that, please feel free to. I usually say you want to stick to the kind of more open-ended question, so that way people can kind of create that curiosity and feel like, okay, yeah, I do want to figure out what my all-worthy brand or archetype is. If you have any questions, of course, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'm going to try to take a look and peek as I go through, and hopefully I'll catch it. I will go in and click on one of these so that way you can actually take a look. I had a one in here. I think I wanted to do this quiz to look at just because it kind of fits everything that I want to talk about today. So, title and tagline. What you really want to do with your title and your tagline, because I mentioned this is the hook of your quiz. Let's see if I can zoom out a little bit. You want to pique curiosity, kind of like I was just mentioning. So you want people to come in and you want them to be like, oh, this is interesting to me. I do kind of wonder what that is. And the big thing with a quiz is to allow people to kind of either discover something about themselves that they didn't know or reaffirm something about themselves that they did already know, and then kind of giving them further information based off of that. And that is kind of what I'm saying, because what your offers and your results are going to do is tell them, like, this is who you are. Here's exactly like what I recommend for you. Here's what you should do, or here's how I can best serve you based off of that personality. So, of course, before you do all of this, we go over prepping your quiz funnel and figuring out your personalities, because when you get to this point of your title and tagline, you should already know what your quiz is about. At this point, you're going to want to know what style you're using, whether that's personality style, scored style, or assessment style. And the reason for that is because your title is going to depend on what that style is, kind of like what I was saying earlier. You want to make sure you can answer kind of a who, what, when, where, why on this part of the page. You want to make sure that people are easy to identify, like, who is this for me? So, when we say what's your entrepreneurial archetype, we're obviously talking to entrepreneurs, people who own businesses. What's a little unclear might be something like, how big of a business? Are they small business? Are they brick and mortar? Are they e-commerce? It really depends on what you're going to focus on in your own business, who you're talking to, if you want to get super specific, or if you do want to kind of keep it a little bit broad, so that way you can say, like, oh, I do work with small businesses, and I work with people who are maybe more mid-market, or I work with somebody who's a brand new entrepreneur, but I also work with entrepreneurs who have been doing this for 10 plus years, maybe trying to rebrand, and so on. It totally depends, of course. When you say the what, you want to make sure that it answers like what you're trying to do with this quiz. Our templates are going to have a little bit more of a simplified tagline. I would recommend editing this and making sure that it does provide clarity, and it does provide a solution, and how you can present a problem and provide a solution of how you solve that problem for them. So make sure that you do keep an eye on making sure the templates are tailored to your own business. When we talk about when, that one is a little bit kind of, I know it depends, but when I say when, I kind of want it to sound more like, okay, like, is this something that is going to take me 20 seconds to take the quiz, 60 seconds? So you'll notice if I ever give feedback on your tagline, I'll make sure that I add in there that timing so people know how long it's going to take that quiz. And when can also mean like, hey, are you going to tell me what this is now? Am I going to figure it out later? Or what's that process look like? When you say where, of course, it's going to be on the quiz, but you might also want to talk a little bit about, who you are, where you are, something like that. And we'll go over all of this in a second. Why and how. Why is a big one, just because, it kind of ties back to the why they should take this quiz. And that's the part where we're going to present a problem, because that's the reason why. And of course, how will be they take the quiz, they get their result, they figure it out, and you let them know. You let them know how you can solve that problem. So from here, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So guys, bear with me as I go in here. I want to make sure that I'm very clear on this part, because your title is such a big deal. So when we are looking at our title and we are figuring out what's your entrepreneurial archetype, for example, I've actually kind of had a different process with this recently when looking at feedback for other people's quizzes. I actually like to do my tagline first, or give feedback on the tagline and try to figure what that is before doing the title. Of course, everybody does it differently, but for me, for some reason, that's just been easier, just because I'm typically a more wordy person. And so it's easier for me to paraphrase from that wordiness, I guess you could say. So because your tagline allows you to be a little bit more wordy, you can make it a little bit longer, then I'll go back and figure out what my title is from that. I've honestly even created quizzes for Interact where I would do the whole quiz and change my title later. So don't feel like you're totally tied to this title when you're on this page. It's always okay to go back and fix this up if you're like, you know what, I realize this doesn't make any sense or it doesn't quite fit. Or maybe you actually sent it around to a few people and they said this was a little unclear or anything like that. So for your title, I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks for it. And these are our best practices. Like I said, every business is different, but these are going to be the biggest tips that I think you should follow. If it doesn't work for your business, that's totally fine. But of course, if you have any questions on that, I'm always happy to talk a little bit about why these are the best practices and why you should maybe tweak your title based off of it. So for your title, you want it to be clear and direct, so short and simple. This is a great example because it's just what's your blank. You're going to see this a lot out there, and I think it is one of the biggest ones just because it kind of covers all of those bases of creating curiosity, being really clear, you know exactly who you're talking to, and so on. You also want your title to be conversational, and so of course you want to ask a question. I have seen some quizzes out there in the past where it'll say something like, take this quiz to find out what's your entrepreneurial archetype, for example, and that's the title. It doesn't really do that kind of curiosity aspect. And the way I like to think about a quiz is imagine if you did have some kind of a physical store. If somebody walked into your store, you would say, hi, hello, what can I help you with today? How can I help you find XYZ? Rather than, hi, walk into my store and I'll let you know what what shirt to buy or something like that. That's the way I like to differentiate this. I know because it's online, it's hard to break away from that kind of formal format where like, this is the title, I'm going to just tell you what it is. You want people to kind of question how this relates to them pretty much. Oh, Linda, sorry, I just saw your comment. So you just created a quiz for a client called What's Your Catholic Mom Personality? Performing really well since it's so niche and clear. Yeah, I remember that one and I loved it because I think too, especially if you are looking at somebody or like an audience that's really specific, you do want to make sure that you call them out because if I were to take that quiz and for example, if it was to say, what's your Catholic personality? And I didn't know it had to do with moms, or if it just said, what's your mom personality? And I didn't know it was specific to Catholicism, then I would probably be like, oh, that's not for me. So you want to make sure that you are calling out the specific people that you're talking to. When you are looking at your title, an important thing to know when you're figuring out what this is you need to know what that problem is that you're solving for your audience. So I usually like to say, are you I guess the best way, I want to like back up a little bit. So the best way for this, of course, is figuring out what your offers are. And that's why we started off with that. And then also figuring out what those personalities are. The personalities are going to have a lot to do with what that problem is, right? And problem doesn't necessarily have to mean struggle. It just means that you serve a purpose that they need and they don't have, or, you are creating that, solution for whatever they don't have right now. But yeah, you want to make sure that it does present the problem and they can easily identify that. So what's your entrepreneurial archetype in this example? So something like how this presents that problem is, you're pretty much telling them like, okay, hey, like you're an entrepreneur. You might have it figured out, you might not, but I do have some tips and tricks that can make, your life easier, whether it'll be automation services or whether it'll be organizational services or tips on that. It could also mean something where, they don't know what tools they're going to use, and this is what you're going to help them do. So I think in that way, that's where we're going to put the tagline. So I'll go a little bit more on that later. I think I just saw Oh, hi, Lisa. Still stuck on quiz ideas for women experiencing divorce. Let me hold that thought and I will think on it more today. And I want to make sure that I give you a good answer. And I don't want to give you something that will be half assed on the Facebook Live. So from here, you also want to know who you're talking to. You want your quiz to give a positive tone. I know I've said that a lot in the past few days, and you've probably seen me say it around in the comments as well. This is just such a big thing because, like I said, there have been quizzes out there where it did have a more negative connotation, and that does create drop-offs. Even if your topic is a little bit more sensitive, you can still have a spin on it to where it's like, it's okay, like I'm going to help you or I have a solution for you versus, it just being totally negative. So the last thing for the title that I really want to point out is the common quiz titles, especially for personality types. It does kind of vary. I've seen some really great ones that didn't quite follow this, but as I'm always saying, these are just best practices that you probably should follow. And if it works for you, that's totally fine. But I usually like to recommend something similar to what we see on the screen here, which is what's your blank or what type of blank are you? I've seen some really good, like, tell me a little bit about XYZ, and I will tell you what your blank is, and so on. Like I said, the reason why I think those are the best for your quiz title, especially for a personality style quiz, is mainly because it is creating that curiosity. It's an open-ended question. It is more clear and concise rather than trying to make something super long. And it's just super simple. It can take you like 5 minutes to create. When all you have to do is tweak from there in case you don't feel it's quite right. Let me know if you guys have questions so far on the title. Lisa, let me see what your comment is. You're wondering if your niche isn't a niche that quizzes will work for. I would love any ideas or suggestions anyone might have on this. I know we have a couple of consultants in the comments right now. If you guys have any insight on that, that would be great. I think that's a little bit more deeper into kind of going back to what I was saying with the goal of your quiz and trying to figure out what you're trying to accomplish by figuring out if a quiz is right for you, which is totally fine. I think it's a great thing to kind of consider and see, is this right? You can also kind of go through the process of, can you figure out a type of different personality and segments for this niche. Not to say that it would not work, just to say that it's totally up to you and it really just kind of depends. And it's okay to kind of reevaluate that. Moving on from your quiz title, we're going to talk a little bit about your tagline. So the actual text that goes right here. Like I said, the ones in our templates are a little bit more simpler. I do recommend actually going in, making sure it is tailored to what you're doing with your quiz, what your offers will be, what the problem is that your audience experiences, and how you do that solution. So the tagline in here, like I keep saying, should present a problem, and that's what makes you click. So when I see what's your entrepreneurial archetype, if this is going to tell me like, a lot of new entrepreneurs, which is going to call out new entrepreneurs, feel that, they struggle a lot with organizing their time, then there's my problem right there. I would steer away from specifically calling out new entrepreneurs if you're not focusing on new entrepreneurs, but if you are, you want to let them know, hey, I am talking to you. So that way, when I do see this, I know exactly who they're talking to. If it is me, then I can say, oh, I'm quite interested. If it's not, if I'm not a new entrepreneur, I've been here for a while, then I can say, oh, clearly this is not a quiz for me. One of the things that I've seen is the issue with the cover page is it will be a little bit more vague and broad and unclear that people will click. And when you look back at your analytics, you'll start to see drop-offs in the first 2 questions, or people will get all the way to the end and then they'll drop off. And the reason for that, especially if it's in the first 2 questions, is usually because the title page, or the cover page, I should say, is unclear. People think maybe this does have to do with me. Then they get to the first question, which asks something like, how long have you been in business for? And they realize like, oh, I actually, don't own a business. Or I actually, haven't started yet or something like that. So that's why it's important to be specific about like who you're talking to and making sure that people can easily identify that from your cover page. I know it's the worst thing in the world to kind of see your analytics not look as great as you want it to, but it's really helpful to see that, so that way you know where you need to make tweaks. So if it happens in the first two questions, I usually recommend people take a look back at what their quiz title is, what their tagline is, and make sure that it is clear and concise and to the point of who they're talking to. Your tagline should also tell them they will find the solution. And what I mean by that is letting them know, like, hey, like, a lot of new entrepreneurs find it hard to organize their time. Take this 60-second quiz and you'll identify the best organizational remedy for you, or something like that, or the best time management tool for you. Depending on what your offers are, what you're going to tell them. But that's kind of the idea. I like to use that two-part where it's saying like, hey, like here's what you are and I know you're struggling with, but you know what, if you take my quiz, I'm going to let you know how you can solve that. And I'm going to give you the solution for it. So that way you know that you're going to get something out of this. And kind of into that, it's also telling them why they're taking the quiz. So if I am taking this quiz and I'm like, one, of course, like, oh yes, I'm a new entrepreneur. Yes, I do find it hard to organize my time. And awesome, I'm going to take this quiz because it's going to give me a solution to that. It's going to tell me how I can fix that, how I can improve on it. So that's pretty much what your tagline is supposed to do. When you're creating this, you need to know what the obstacle is that's stopping them from getting to the solution to that problem that you're solving. So I know in that example, I mentioned organization and time management. So that is something that you want to figure out when you are doing all of this. It has everything to do with what your segments are, what your offer is, who your audience is, and your business as a whole. So what are they struggling with? Is it finances? Is it time? Knowledge, access? Is it tools? All of the above. It really kind of just depends on what you've already figured out when you did prep your quiz funnel. So that's why we do this part after we do all of that planning. I do have another example here. Hopefully it's helpful to give multiple. This actually came from a quiz challenge that we did. God, I think it was in April, maybe it was June. It was earlier this year. The quiz was for a business that sold planners, and I believe it was a different type of planner for based on like, you know, who you were or something like that. But I loved this example of the tagline saying, you know, mothers of preschoolers often find themselves overwhelmed and stressed because they don't plan their day. The right type of planner can buy back those hours. And if you take this 60-second quiz, it'll help identify the best planner for you. So I like that example because it kind of covered all the bases where it presented the problem. We talked a little bit about the solution and why they should take the quiz. Any questions on title and tagline so far? I see a little bit here. Sorry guys, I'm going back because I do see some that came in. Hi Janelle, I build customizable membership site templates other than something that helps them discover which template might serve them best. Any fun creative ideas? Oh, I love that. I haven't seen like a membership type templates. I've seen like landing page templates specific to usually Squarespace. That I would say the best way to do something like that would be to group people into personalities where, for example, maybe you can do something like, are you minimalist? Do you like geometric shapes? And then maybe another one could be something like a little bit more, I don't want to say like loud as in like a negative way, but loud as in like they love really vibrant, bright colors. and so on. So I think you should group people into personalities like that and then give them a range of different templates that helps them find which ones, that gives them the option to find which one is right for them. Okay, awesome. Linda and Lisa, I see you guys talking a little bit in there. I want to make sure you guys get to kind of discuss. I will go back in and look at that later and see if I have some ideas after our call. And sorry, again, I am going past the 30 minutes again today. I do have a lot to cover. The last thing that I do want to talk about is the cover page as a whole. This page right here, because it's the hook and the first thing that you want to see, there are some different tips and tricks that I would pay attention to. One of the biggest things is also going to be your cover image. We actually have an article on this. I have to find it and I can link it to you guys, but there was a study that was done based off of why people click on, articles or they click on links. And one of the biggest reasons was they clicked on it because they saw a single person on that image, usually smiling. I know she's not entirely smiling in this photo, but it does have everything to do with entrepreneur archetype. I think it relates to that title well. But in general, people will click because they see a single person smiling and in the camera. I have seen quizzes where people will, put a group of people, they'll put like an object in there, and those are totally fine. This kind of goes back to, it really just kind of depends on the topic of your business. But I would say that I don't entirely have data on whether or not they worked well, but I have seen it done. So just as a best practice, you might want to consider doing the person smiling, but of course you don't have to stick to that. Another thing with your cover page image, you do want to make sure it's relevant. So kind of tying back to those quizzes that I said will not have a single person smiling. Usually it was because it had to do with their business and it had to do with the topic of their quiz. So they didn't, they put something else in there because it was relevant. In this situation, or in this specific example, I do like that she isn't smiling because it kind of gives off this more of a, boss lady vibe, and it has everything to do with what's your entrepreneurial archetype. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful in that. Awesome. So today we went over title and tagline. I'm just going to kind of go over some quick things with everything that I covered for today. You want this whole page to pique curiosity. I usually recommend keeping it open-ended so that way it accomplishes that. This is the hook of your quiz, so you do want to pay close attention to it. It's always okay to go back and edit it after you've completed your quiz and you're like, actually, you know what? This doesn't make any sense. I need to tweak it up. Or if after you send it to a few people and ask them to try it out, that's totally fine as well. With your title, you want it to be clear and direct. I usually recommend keeping it short and simple and following the formula of what's your blank, or, what type of blank are you, or tell me a little bit about, XYZ, and I will tell you blank. You want to make sure you know who you're talking to, and you want to make sure that this whole page presents a problem and lets them know that you have the solution to the problem. You also want to make sure that it does answer why they're taking the quiz, and by that, you can definitely do that in terms of presenting that solution and that problem. So that way it's kind of like subtly telling them like, hey, I'm calling you out. I know that you are having this issue, but don't worry, I'm here to help you with that. And with your cover page image, I usually recommend having one single person in here smiling, but it does depend on your quiz, depends on your niche, so make sure that it is also relevant. A really quick thing that I do want to point out in here when you are creating your quiz, if you don't decide to go with a template, it will look like how I had it set up yesterday, where all of this was blank, there was no color, it was all gray. All the templates are customizable, so if you click on one and you decide this isn't for you, you can totally delete this, you can edit it, you can fix it however you want. But pretty much when you are putting in your title and all of that, you are going to go in here and just start typing. What's your entrepreneurial archetype? Whoa. And then same thing with the tagline. Take this quick quiz. Most new entrepreneurs, etc. Type everything else in there. For your cover image, it will show this box. It'll just be blank in case It'll be blank if you don't have an image in there and you're not using a template, or you remove the image that is there. You can either click edit cover image, or you can just click in that box to open up the image editing option. So if you are in a template, this is pretty much just cropping it to see, which part of the image do you want. If you want to replace the image, or if you're starting new, it'll look like this. We do work with Unsplash and Jiffy, so you can search for images right in here and use those. We only pull the free stock photos, so you don't have to worry about paying for it. However, if you do have your own photos, you can always upload. We do have recommended dimensions that are in here, so pay attention to that. I know I've had a lot of instances where I tried to upload a photo and it was like it's too small, or the resolution's not enough, things like that. It will let you know before putting it in there. You can also link to an image right here. I haven't used this myself, so I don't quite have specific advice on it. But the reason why I personally haven't is if you were to grab, a link from somewhere else, then if that person were to remove that image from wherever that's linked, then it's no longer there. It wouldn't show up. So when you're searching for images, I usually tell people to be pretty specific. And then it'll pop up all these people. You can also toggle over to Jiffy and take a look at what's in here. And then once you choose a photo, I like this one, then it'll give you the option to kind of move around where you crop it or how you crop it. Do you just want this part? And so on. Once that's ready to go, you do want to hit crop and save right here. And your image will go in. Ooh, that's a bad crop. Then your image will show up right here. This is how it's going to show up in your quiz. Another thing to pay attention to when you're on this page and throughout the quiz as well is also the colors and branding, which is going to be up at the top here. If you want to do the colors, you'll click on here. It's all labeled, so background is going to be this part, this outer part right here is what people will see. A lot of people like to match this to what the background color of their actual website is. So if they do put it on a landing page and embed it there, it will be the same thing. Or it's totally up to you if you want a different color. Options. This is going to usually be more for, I believe, when you're going through the quiz questions. I have to double check on that. Selection is when you actually click. So when I actually click take quiz, it'll turn that color. And when you go through the quiz, when people are choosing that answer choice, it'll be that color. We do have a progress bar on our quizzes so people can see how far they are, and you can choose the color for that as well. As you can see here, you have the option to input exact codes for what your colors are. And you can also drag and drop. You can also drag here. And then what color you want your buttons to be. So for example, take quiz. You can also edit the font in here. We already have Google fonts included in here. So if you guys can choose through that, heads up with the fonts, you can't pick and choose for different areas of the quiz what the font is. So once you choose one font, it will change it for the entire quiz. That includes title, questions, answer choices, and also buttons. If you do have your own font, you can upload it through Adobe Typekit. We have our classic fonts in here, and then our default font, which I believe is our website font. People don't really use that one. If you use Adobe Typekit, you would click in here, fill out the information, save, and it will upload. And then you can also include your logo right from here. This is going to be similar to uploading in the cover image like I showed you. So you choose file, it gives those recommended dimensions, types, and so on. You can also link to it. When you do upload your logo, I don't have an example right now, but it usually shows up right here throughout the quiz. All right, guys, any last minute questions that you have right now, whether it's about this page, I will continue to go through the builder as we move through the questions and the results and so on. And then I do have a day reserved for like any tech tips inside of the builder. So if you do go in there and start playing around, make sure that you do have those questions ready so I can answer it for you live. Or of course, if you put it in the comments, I can try to answer it as best as I can through text, but it is a lot easier if I can go in here and show you. This is the cover page. Today we covered title and tagline. I hope you guys learned a lot. And like I said, I'd love a progress check of if this information is helpful, if you guys are getting the information that you need about the builder and also the best practices and so on. Tomorrow, what we're going to be talking about, heads up, my dog is walking next to me and I have a feeling she's going to bark in a second. But tomorrow, not tomorrow, sorry, Monday, we got weekends, guys. So enjoy your time on your weekend. On Monday for day 5, we're going to start talking about questions. This one's also going to be a pretty long day. So I know I've been saying 30 minutes and I've been going a little bit over and I'm really sorry, but we're going to be talking about questions. That's going to be a big day. So stay tuned, everybody. Have a great weekend. There she goes. I don't know if you heard her bark, but I will see you guys on Monday. Have a good one. Bye.